You're listening to Real Talk Podcast with Steve Harrison, where he'll be talking about current events, finance, God, relationships, lifestyle, and health. So stay tuned, because Steve is going to bring that real talk on Real Talk Podcast.
Welcome to Real Talk. I'm your host, Stephen Harrison, and we have a great show for you. My guest today is Austin Harris, and today we're going to talk about God as our Heavenly Father. Austin grew up with his older brother, mother, and father who separated. He developed a sound wisdom over the time his parents' relationship. He found refuge in the church community and developed strong respect for his mother and father as human beings who have complex lives. Austin, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you, Steve. I'm delighted to be here.
Austin, tell us about yourself and what was your childhood like?
So as a child, I had a pretty probably average childhood. So, I'm kind of small. I'm 5'3", and growing up, I was kind of chubby. So with that being said, a lot of the times, like, older boys or just boys my age would try to pick on me and stuff. So I actually used to fight a lot. Okay. And I got away from that, as I matured and got older. But as far as my childhood and, like, my happiness goes, I was a pretty happy kid growing up, I always had a smile on my face. I always loved telling jokes and laughing and hanging out with friends. I started playing piano when I was around 3 years old, and I continued playing piano for about 13 years after that, so I stopped when I was around 16. And along the way, I picked up some other instruments like trumpet, the drums, saxophone, but nothing really grasped my attention like the piano did.
Okay, let's go back. You're from East Atlanta.
I am.
Okay, let's talk about that.
So East Atlanta is a very popular place. People like Gucci Mane and other rappers came from my neighborhood. Like, they really came from the area that I'm from. So I'm from Decatur.
Okay, Decatur.
And that's the east side of Atlanta. Not really East Atlanta, but east side. So my area was pretty okay, I grew up off Flex Mills, and it's a pretty good area, It's mostly black people. You have a little culture, a little diversity thrown in there. I was probably closer to hood adjacent than, growing up in the hood.
Okay.
I think I had a beautiful house, and I always praise and thank my mom for, just being able to support us and put us in the house and the household that we're in.
Okay, you talked about you play sports. Now, you're very small. How did that work out?
It worked out fine. So, like, I always wanted to play football, like, a more aggressive sport. But since I was small, being my mom's only boy, she always, kind of was hesitant to stuff like that. So instead of playing football, I grew up playing baseball and basketball.
And how did you do in that, since your size?
I did pretty good. I never let my size hold me back,
Okay.
I actually, since I was so involved in music, as I grew up, I started to stray more and more from sports, and I got more involved in performing arts.
Okay, did it become a passion for you?
It did. So I've been playing piano for as long as I remember. So as far as a passion, it really was a hobby. It was really something that I loved. And it was really just something that brought me joy as I grew up.
Okay. Now, what was some of the structure of your family, and how did that change?
So growing up, I have a stepbrother, and he's my dad's son. So
Okay.
in a way, it was always a divided household. So my mom was always loving, and she always was there for my brother whenever he needed help. But in terms of our household, sometimes you could tell that it was divided. So my mom was always the person that really picked me up from school whenever she could, because my mom's a doctor, but sometimes she'd have to work late. So
Okay.
my mom was working late. My dad would come pick me up, and sometimes it would be my uncle to come pick me up. Actually, my brother and I went to the same elementary school, so a lot of the times we were being picked up together, but he's 4 years older than me, so eventually we kind of strayed away from that. So growing up, I realized that my dad wasn't really as involved in my life as my mom was. So, for instance, my mom always made it to every piano recital that I had.
Okay.
And my dad always made it to every basketball game that my brother had. So my brother was a freshman playing varsity at Green
Okay.
Forest. And so my dad just kind of always gravitated towards my brother in some ways.
Okay. Now, you also said that you stopped depending on men to be your father. Can you explain that to us?
When I say I stopped depending on men to be my father, it all goes back to when my father left my life. I really didn't have anyone else to depend on. So my mom, being the beautiful, strong woman that she is, I never wanted to really lean on her and kind of show that weakness, because my mom was going through so much by herself.
Okay.
I never really wanted to lean on her and bring her spirit down.
And this happened at the age of 12?
I was around 12 or 13 when my father left. So at that very early stage of my adolescence, kind of right when I became a teenager, I really stopped leaning on other people. I really started to develop myself and really learn who I was and love me for who I was.
And where'd you get that strength from, the church or?
I really think I found that strength in my mom, always watching her keep her best foot forward. And then also the church. I was raised in the church and I always had a good relationship with God. So I wasn't necessarily someone who was so devout, I wasn't someone that was read your Bible every day. I wasn't going around telling my friends to read their Bible daily.
Okay.
But at the same time, I found my strength in Christ. I found my strength in the relationship that I did have with God.
Okay. Now, you was an Eagle Scout. Can you talk about that?
I was an Eagle Scout. I am an Eagle Scout. So
okay.
That's another thing. I've been a Boy Scout since I was 6 or 7, and my mom loves outdoors. So that was kind of one of her passions that she spread down to me and gave to me. And I love being an Eagle Scout. I love, being hands-on, being in the woods. It's all a learning experience, and honestly, I learned so much from it. I shot my first gun as a Boy Scout,
Okay.
I really just loved every part of it.
Okay, you also talked about your grandpa was one of the most funniest and he likes to tell jokes. Can you talk about your grandfather?
My grandfather is a clown, Steve.
Okay.
He is so funny.
Well, I'm a grandfather too, so we want to make our grandchildren laugh. Go ahead.
So growing up, my grandfather kind of would get on my mom and my grandmother's nerves, but I always understood my grandfather, and I kind of took some of his humility and some of his kindness that he always had. And he's the kind of person, he would talk to anybody about anything. He would talk to a complete stranger and say something off the wall, and I just really love him for who he is. I've never seen him change around a single person. He's always been like funny, charismatic, and like growing up, he was just hilarious to me. He was just a strength in my life in the sense of he was just a male that always was himself. He was never ever anyone else in anyone's presence. He always made people smile and laugh. He always did his best to be himself.
Did you pick up some of his characters, you think?
Probably. My friends would definitely tell you that I
Okay.
do what I want and I say what I want. But at the same time, it's respect and it's humility to it, I love laughing. I love making my friends laugh. Kind of growing up, I used to kind of be placed in a class clown position.
Okay.
But I've always been one of the smartest males that were in my class, so.
Okay. When you reflect on your mother experience raising you, what comes to mind?
Really, what comes to mind is strength. No matter what I needed or no matter what my mom was going through, she always put her best foot forward to be there for me. Whether it was something that I may have needed, whether it was putting food on the table, my mom was really a strong influence in my life.
Okay, you also said she also works a lot. Can you talk to about all the scheduling that she works and all the things she has to do as a doctor?
So my mom is a podiatrist and she owns her own practice. So
Okay.
she works for herself, Steve.
Okay.
She literally does not answer to anyone but herself.
Okay.
So with that being said, my mom's schedule was always flexible enough to where she could take off work if she had to. But at the same time, my mom had to put food on the table. So with that being said, my mom would work whatever hours she needed to really do what she had to do to make the income that we needed for life and sustainability. Honestly, I found strength in the people around me. So if you talk to one of my friends, they won't really say, well, Austin was a crybaby or Austin really leaned on me for support. I really found my strength in the love and laughter that I gained through other people. I didn't like to lean on people. I didn't really like to, I won't say get close to people, but I didn't like to emote certain emotions that I didn't necessarily feel that they made me weak, but at the same time, I didn't feel that it was required to lean on those people. Because growing up, I realized that everybody had certain things that they were going through. So, for instance, I had friends that I went to school with for my entire life. And as I grew up, I learned certain things about them that they may not have known. So, like, I had female friends that actually had been raped early on in life. And these are people that I grew up with my entire life. So, with that being said, you never know what someone else is going through. And because you don't know what someone else is going through, I really didn't feel like necessarily putting my baggage on somebody else. Because just like you're fighting through your life and you're fighting to get to the next phase, so are all the people around you, the people that you love. No matter how much you love them, you have to find the strength in yourself.
Okay, you said that females that you've been close to have been raped. Are you still in contact with them? Say, what happened at that time? Have you reached out to them, or you just like never got connected with them?
Honestly, I like sometimes I would learn about situations like that, and they never knew that I knew. Sometimes I would learn through other friends, or I would learn through maybe overhearing them. Not that I was eavesdropping, or
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, how did I necessarily reach out? I was just always there for my friends. I was really
Okay.
just a listening. I was a helping hand. I was there in whatever ways I could be. So if you ask me for help, I'm the kind of person where if you need something, I'm gonna do my best to give it to you.
Okay. Now, for people that are in the same similar situation, how would you recommend helping people making decisions in their life?
Honestly, to make a decision in your life, you need wisdom. So with that being said, pay attention to the people around you. Pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to the things that your mother and father go through, because they may not always react in the most positive ways, but you can learn from their reactions. You can learn from the pain that they feel. You can learn from the way they handle situations. So you may not always have the answer, but sometimes taking time to reflect on yourself, taking time to look upon others and learn, it's always just about having the willingness and having an open mind and a listening ear. So if you can listen and pay attention, if you can hold yourself to a higher esteem and not always feel responsible for the emotions and the problems that other people go through, you will always come out and find strength in somebody else's struggle.
Okay, now you're only 20 years old and you talk like, like you're 30 or 35 years old. I just want to back up a little bit. When your mother and father separated, what did that do to you at 12 years old? And we talked about that a little bit. Have you ever felt depressed or down or like, why are they separating? Have any of those thoughts ever run through your mind?
Of course, of course. So I was 12 or 13 years old, and at that time, I really felt like the entire reason my dad left was because of me. And I say that because when my father left, he actually took my brother with him.
Okay.
So I was kind of the son that he left behind, and so I I stopped leaning on men. I really didn't lean on anybody
But why did you feel like he's the reason that, you're the reason that he left?
because I was the son that he left behind. He chose to take my brother with him. I mean, but at the same time, if he would have taken me, oh, my mom would have had something to say. It would have been a whole different fiasco.
Okay. Also, what are some of the things you'd like to share with the listeners that are listening to us now about this whole experience that you dealt with growing up?
Honestly, always do your best to be there for the people you love. Whenever you're fighting and whenever you're struggling through your own oppression and your own battles, always remember that you're not alone. At any given time, whether you're in a room with 1,000 people, no matter how alone you may feel, there's always God. And even if you're not a person that believes in God, you always have yourself. And finding the time to sit down and learn who you are, finding the time to really love yourself, that's where I found my strength. You have to learn to be comfortable with who you are.
Did that come from the church or that came from your mother, you think?
It probably came from my mother more so, but my mom is someone that's heavily grounded in Christ.
Okay.
So for me saying that it came from my mother, her strength came from the church. So it was really kind of a battle or a conflict between the two. And maybe not a conflict, but really just support from both the church and my mom. I won't necessarily give one more strength than the other, but I would definitely say that both the church and my mom were pivotal in creating who I am.
Okay. What is your relationship with your father now?
Well, my relationship with my father wasn't good for a long time. I had anger towards him. I had hate towards him. And I really was trying to wrap my head around why he left. And as I grew up, I found the wisdom and the maturity to go ahead and say, well, my father is his own person. And
Okay.
although he is my father, he also was fighting his own battles. He was also struggling to be the person that he was. And I don't necessarily know why he made the decisions that he made, And growing up, my dad was always a good father to me. Every Sunday when I was with him and when we went to church together,
Okay.
you better believe he was going to take us to the movies or we are going to go to the batting cages. So for me, I had to understand that my dad is who he is. And just like I'm fighting to be great and to love myself, my dad is also going through things that I may not understand. So I can't blame him for the decisions that he makes because I don't know and I don't necessarily understand the reasons behind his decisions.
How did you let go? You said you was angry. How did you let go of the anger against your father?
Time, Steve. It really took time and patience. So as I was growing up and as I was figuring out who I was, figuring out who I am, I learned that all that anger, it really was holding me back. And you can never really ground yourself in anger.
No, it's not good.
Anger is one of those emotions that will always come up in different ways. So you may think you're all a bundle of joy, but at the end of the day, you're going to say something that will hurt somebody else, or you're going to do something spiteful. And, really I just learned that you can't allow yourself to revolve in that cycle. You have to be mature enough to bring yourself up and bring yourself out of that. And the way I did it was through the forgiveness of my father. Because it takes energy to be mad, Steve.
Yes, it does.
It takes energy to be mad.
Yes,
and
it does.
What I learned was once I forgave my father, it was such a weight that I let go of.
Okay.
It was such a weight off of me, Steve.
Now, what's your relationship with your brother? You ever reach out to your brother and try to figure out, why did he take him?
So my brother went through a lot that I really still don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my brother was incarcerated for a little bit. Like, my brother's on trial right now to go back to prison for a crime that he says he didn't commit.
Okay.
And once again, I wasn't there. My brother actually developed schizophrenia after divorce and after the time that we spent separated. When I met him again after 4 or 5 years,
okay,
when I came back to him, he was a completely different person than who I knew.
What's the age difference between you and your brother?
4 years.
4 years? Okay, so you're 20 and he's 24.
Absolutely.
Okay. You think the separation has something to do with his behavior?
My brother was my best friend in a lot of different ways. I was my brother's best friend, So I think that separation definitely created a weakness for both of us. It definitely created a hole in our eternity, it created a hole in our souls, because your brother is someone that you will always love. That's blood, Steve.
Yes.
That's blood. And so with that being said, he didn't have anybody, He didn't necessarily have friends. He didn't necessarily have anyone else to lean on and to talk to. And even though I was able to kind of be okay alone, maybe my brother struggled in ways that I still don't understand. So honestly, no, I still don't understand what he went through, and I still haven't necessarily had the strength and the courage to ask him. And at the same time, with so much that's going on, I'm not sure that he's ready to talk about it yet. And so that's one of those things that when my brother's ready, then he will speak. But I do my best to talk to him when I can. So, I'm at Sikorsky doing an internship.
Yes.
In Connecticut, and I'm from Atlanta. My brother's in South Carolina right now. So I'll probably call him every 3 weeks. But I've gone long periods of time without talking to him. So
are you doing that because you don't want to, you're trying to give him his own life, or you're doing that because you just feel like he's not ready to talk now?
At times it's been because he wasn't ready to talk, and I really wasn't comfortable talking to him.
Okay.
So like when we first got back together, the day that I saw him.
How long ago was that?
I think that was 2016 or 2015, so
Okay.
About 2 or 3 years now. But even the day that I did see him, after all those years that passed, we were only together for an hour.
Okay.
And it was one of those things where my brother, when he saw me, he really understood a lot that had happened to me. And one of the things that he said to me, Steve, was he said that he noticed that my jubilance and the light behind my eyes was gone. And that was something that I really felt, because once again, I don't lean on people, and people aren't very good at reading me at all. I'm the type of person where I'm gonna do my best to be happy. I'm gonna do my best to show love.
Is that coming from the church, or that's coming from the way your mother raised you?
That's coming from the church, in the sense of my mom was raised in the church. My
Okay.
grandmother, my grandfather, they own a church. My mom's
Okay.
grandfather, they owned a church. My mom's grandmother had her own church.
Okay.
So the strength that my mom showed me, the courage, the lessons that she taught me, all of those lessons were instilled in her in the church. So it all came from the church in one way or another.
Do you think your family would be different if your mother and father didn't separate?
Probably.
And the reason why I say that, because a lot of times parents don't realize the effect that divorce have on their children. Every child can't handle a divorce.
Absolutely.
Some turn to alcohol, some excel, and some just like, I don't want y'all to split.
I think I found my strength in the relationship that I had with my mother and my grandmother. They were pivotal, Steve. I'm telling you, they changed who I was. I really grew up with, not grew up, but once my father left, I really kind of had a darkness inside of me. And a lot of people may not have been able to see it, but I really had a lot of pain. And growing up, I've always had good friends and good people that loved me. And I don't know that my brother necessarily had that.
Have you ever seen him run from situations, or, because sometimes advice and help come, and sometimes we don't reach out to receive it. Have you seen him like always busy and like, no, I don't have no time for this?
I wouldn't say that my brother was busy, but my brother was definitely a strong-minded individual. Like, he made better grades than I did for a long period of time. So when I say that he was a strong-minded individual, my brother was stubborn. And I'm stubborn too, but my brother was stubborn in the sense of, if he doesn't want to do it, or if he doesn't think that you're correct, that's it. That's really it. And maybe he's not like that now. Because when we talk, you could tell that, I won't say that he's leaning on me, but you could still tell that his experiences and my experiences, he's always asking me questions like, what is it like to have friends? And it's like he's always asking me questions that essentially, to me, resolve back to, what is it like to be loved by others that aren't related to you or that are related to you?
Now, has the family rallied around him to try to help him?
Steve, I would say probably not to absolutely not, somewhere around there. My dad doesn't do anything. My brother cut my father off completely. My brother will not return his calls. My brother feels like my dad is a dead weight to him. And I don't necessarily know what my brother and my father have experienced together, but I felt like that for a long time as well. And like I said, I don't know what they've been through together, so I don't know the reasons why they fought. I don't know the reasons why they may have gone through some of those issues. But what I do know is my brother does not lean on anybody in our family anymore.
Well, I'm listening to you, and you found the power to forgive and to let go, and that's a part of healing when you let go. Like you said, anger is not good. So sometimes when you don't let go of anger, it can eat your soul. It can eat away. Like you said, your mother and father, they are their own people. So even though you got mad, you said, you know what, that's still life. I got to find strength in myself. And that could be the key to your brother not letting go. Because forgiveness is a healing to the body and to the mind. Is that you seem like you had this darkness, but you let it go, and you receive help from the church. And did you ever reach out to the pastor in the church and say, listen, there's times where I just don't know. Can I just talk? Or you just always like, you know what, I'm trying to figure this out for myself?
So once again, growing up, after my father left, I didn't lean on any man.
Okay, you said that.
That was pastor, brother, reverend, deacon, Boy Scout leader. It wasn't a single man that I really felt was my mentor. It wasn't a single adult male that I felt was someone that could guide me better than either my mom could guide me, God could guide me, or I could guide myself. And some of that was through, like I said, observation.
Okay.
I just realized that even pastors have their flaws,
Yeah, every man does.
Every person does.
Every person does.
So, honestly, I really just found my strength and my will to do great. Like, I found my strength and my desire to put food on the table for myself and my family. Because, like I said, my mom owns her own business.
Yes.
She owns her own practice. She doesn't have a retirement fund, Steve. When my mom becomes old and she can't work anymore, there will be no more money for her. There will be nothing left for my mom except me.
Well, you said she's working a lot, so I'm sure she's, trying to make it happen for herself. Working a lot means that you're trying to get the paper.
Absolutely. So my mom, she works a tremendous amount, and then also my grandma just had a stroke and a heart attack, and my
Sorry to hear
grandma,
about that.
yeah, my grandma lives with us now, but that's still a blessing. Like, my grandma's alive.
Yes.
I can call her. I can go home and give her a hug. And there's nothing that I'm more thankful of than that fact right now in my life. I would trade everything that I have right now for my grandma's health, for my mom's health,
Okay.
because that's what matters to me. So in my life, I found strength in my desire to protect the people I love, in a sense, because one day, my grandma will pass away. One day, my mom will pass away, and I won't necessarily have anyone else. So right now, I found my strength in my desire to help the people that I love, and I don't really necessarily do what I do for myself. So, with that being said, a lot of people may listen to that and go, how can you be where you are and you don't necessarily do what you're doing for you? And I feel like my life isn't for me,
Our lives are for someone else.
I feel like I'm here to help guide and bless other people. I feel like money is great, and I love lavish things, or I like lavish things, but at the end of the day, sustainability, being able to eat, being able to put a roof over your head and clothes on your back, that's what matters. And right now, I'm going on to be an aerospace engineer, not only so that I may have money, but I really just care about my family. And
Okay.
I don't have kids right now,
At 20 years old, you better not have no kids
Right.
now. Man. You don't need that. You don't need that.
Right. I definitely don't have any kids right now, but that's always something that I think about. Like, if I were to bring a child into this world right now, I'm completely aware that minimum wage will not do it. It just will
No, it
not
won't
do
do
it at all. I won't be able to provide for them like my mother provided for me.
Let me back you up a little bit. You always said that you was angry at your father. Have you ever been angry at your mother because of separation? Because I hear you, and you said that your father took your other brother, but was you angry at your mother that they didn't stick together?
I don't think I was angry at my mom that they didn't stick together. After, of course, I was angry when I was 12, 13.
Okay.
But the anger that I had towards my mom didn't persist, at least not because of the divorce. Just growing up, I kind of started to feel a separation to my mom, or towards my mom, because she didn't really understand who I was anymore. I may have asked her, like, Mom, what's my favorite color? And she might have gotten my favorite color right, but if I asked her what my favorite food was, she would have said something from like when I was 8 or when I was
Okay.
9. And so I started to feel a separation to my mom, and maybe an anger towards her, because I really felt like she should have known me more. I felt like, being my mom, you should have kind of been there for me in some different ways.
Well, sometimes when adults go through tough things, sometimes the kids or the husband get pushed to the side. So we do look to our parents for that strong arm, but sometimes what they're going through, it's just like, I don't want to be bothered. I'm older than you. I'm speaking of myself, and I know what you're talking about as a 20-year-old. And one of my experience, which I want to share with the audience, that I played basketball. I was very good in sports, and my father was never there. But I found other kids' parents giving me accolades and looking for me, saying, you know what, Steve, you played so good today, but their kid wasn't as good as me. So you want your kids to excel, and just yearning for a father is not easy all the time, especially when the father has his own life, like you said. And sometimes we make mistakes. We need to be forgiven, just like our kids make mistakes, and they need to be forgiven. So that's what life does. Life has its ups and downs. But for you to be 20 years old, and for what you have been through, I just want to say, God bless you. Keep praying and keep your head up high. I'm here to support you, anything you need. And before we close, I just want to let you say one more thing to the audience before we close out.
For everyone that's listening, I would honestly say, and this is my best advice, keep your head up. Keep moving forward. Take time to find yourself. Take time to love the people around you.
can reach out to Steve at realtalk877@gmail.com, Instagram and Facebook at Real Talk with Steve Harrison.